Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and a huge welcome to Produce, Mix, Fix, and Conquer. So my name is Steve Beck. I'm founder of this awesome community. We've got an absolutely amazing guest I'm about to bring on to the live stream in a minute, Mr. Kellii Scott. Now, many of you know Kellii has been drumming for well over 4 decades now in the absolute legendary band Failure, and would like to bring him on straight away. So without further ado, Mr. Kellii Scott. How you doing, Kellii?
I'm good, thanks. How are you today?
Really good, thanks, man. It's a bit of a chaotic weekend, but we're all here for you today, man. So really looking forward to having a good chat with you.
Sure. Yeah, you never know. Weekends can be a mixed bag. I've actually had we've had other people's children's weekend.
Really?
Where we, one of the guys in the band, his son had a birthday party, so we went and checked that out yesterday. And another one of our close friends, his son plays baseball. So we got up bright and early and went and caught his baseball game this morning.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, it's great. Like the only thing better than having children is having other people's children.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I've got a 4-year-old myself, to be fair, so I'm kind of like I'm learning as I'm going along. So it's oh man, it's absolutely crazy. Has it changed then, really? To be fair, like I'm guessing over the years since like the 90s when you started drumming with Failure, and obviously now having kids, do you take your family on the road with you when you play live? Does that tend to happen? Or?
Well, like I said, like I don't have any children. We hang out with other people's children.
Ah, of course.
That's what I meant. The only thing better than having children is hanging out with other people's children.
Absolutely agree.
Meaning not having your own children, but hang out with theirs and give them back.
Absolutely.
But to answer your question, the other 2 guys do. Greg has 2 children. He has a daughter that's 13 now, and his son just turned 4. And Ken has a 11 and a 13-year-old.
Right. Wow.
But they don't necessarily come on the road with us. What we do is we don't tour for long periods of time. Like we'll go out anywhere from like 3 to maybe 5 weeks tops.
Yeah.
And then maybe we'll go out again a couple more months down the road, and potentially do that 2 or 3 times a record cycle. But that being said, there have been occasions where like my wife will fly out to a week's worth of shows and travel around with us. She's also a photographer.
Oh, cool.
So that really comes in handy. We get just some beautiful, live and candid shots for the band by just a top-notch photographer. So, and there have been instances. I think actually the families did come out when we were in Chicago 2 years ago on the Last Records touring.
Yeah.
But just for like probably
Oh, we still got you there, Kellii.
Yeah, did you catch that? It looked like it cut off for a second.
Yeah, I've still got you there, man.
Am I back?
Yep, you're back.
Yeah, but nobody, the only person that's ever come out, I think, and traveled with us is my wife, Priscilla.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. Oh, thanks so much for that, Kellii. So tell us, like we've done with our previous guests over the last few months, we've really dug deep and found out a little bit about their history. So if it's cool with you, so maybe let's have a good chat about how you started off getting into music. So when you were growing up as a kid, what type of music were your parents playing you? What sort of music did you start getting into as a young kid?
I fortunately got the music bug like pretty early. Everyone in my family, with the exception of my mom, like she kind of liked country music, but she wasn't as fanatic about her music listening as probably my older brother, older sister, and my dad. My dad was in the military, so he would, whenever he would come home, he was on submarines. Whenever he would come home, he would spend hours and hours and hours making mixtapes. So he'd bring those on the boat with him. So he'd have music to listen to when he was out to sea. So he kind of started it off. Like, there was always music playing in the house. There was always music playing in the car. You know, and everybody sang along. And, you know, it was one of the few occasions where, like, I got to cuss when I was 3, 4, and 5. Like, if the word bitch was in, say, an Elton John song, I was allowed to say it. So that was always pretty fun. But I fortunately, I grew up in a very music consuming family. But I think the bug probably really hit me. I was actually just talking to my wife about this. I got Greg's son, who I said just turned 4, for his birthday, a cassette Walkman. And I got like all these old cassettes, like Genesis and Kiss and Miles Davis, and kind of like a bit of everything, the Cars. And I was explaining to her that when I turned 5, I got a standalone 8-track player with a set of speakers. And my older brother gave me all of his old Kiss 8-tracks. So I started off, like, Kiss was my entry into my own music. And I would, like, quite literally run home from school every day and put on fake rock concerts in my bedroom.
Nice.
You know, and I did that for a bit and, like, played tennis rackets along with the shows and smashed them, you know, at the end of the record, just like Kiss. I would spit up Kool-Aid for fake blood. I would nick my sister's hairspray and, like, hold up a lighter and turn my head sideways to the mirror and, like, pretend I was blowing flames. And, you know, so it was this whole, like, big production. And it was, you know, it kind of led me into finding this secret world where, you know, it was just sort of my own thing. And I was this character and I was jamming for all these thousands of people. I especially loved Kiss's live records. You know, it all just kind of, it started and sort of ended there. You know, I built this little cocoon and sort of carried that universe with me all the way through to, like, probably my formative years here in LA. Is really when I, you know, started performing live for people. And, it, you know, at some point it ended because there was definitely a moment where, all right, well, I'm probably not going to get to play for hundreds of thousands of people. And, you know, you kind of grow up. Is this, like, something I'm willing to stick with, even if I don't make any money, you know, and get all the shiny things that, you know, at the time I think I'm supposed to be getting from playing music? And, you know, the answer was yes. And I think that was sort of the beginning point of me looking for something else out of playing music and beginning to get something else out of playing music. You know, it was less about whether I became rich and famous and more about how good can I get at this?
Absolutely. So what
it was, you know, it was Kiss and Iron Maiden and Motley Crue and, you know, the 80s stuff. You know, to LA, that they were all so okay.
Absolutely amazing. So cool. I actually remember seeing Kiss live in Manchester a couple of years ago. And those guys, man, they've still got it. It's like, I don't know if you've seen them recently, but they kind of swing in on the zip wire as well, and they still go for it, you know?
Yeah, I went and saw them a few times when they first got back together. Actually, Failure and Kiss, we opened up their first show back. They did, like, a radio show for K-Rock out here in California. Was their very first show, and then they started doing tours again after that. But it was, you know, it was kind of a carnival. You know, at first I was, like, really jazzed about it because I had seen them when I was a child, you know, and they were all still with the original members in full makeup in, like, the late 70s. You know, I just remember thinking they were the most incredible thing in the world. But then, you know, flash forward 30 years and I've been playing music, like, longer than I've not been playing music. And, after the initial excitement of, oh my God, Kiss got back together, it was kind of like, fuck, like how do I wind up in a band like Failure when I started with this sort of,
Absolutely. Great question.
the two bands couldn't be more different in every single way.
Yeah.
Um,
Amazing.
but yeah, and then I went and saw him again. A friend of mine worked at K-Rock, so we got like, I think 5th row or 8th row, like right in the middle. And it was just crazy. It was crazy, but it's amazing to see them able. I don't really have any interest in seeing them again, but I certainly like. I can appreciate and be happy for people who can sustain a career, a lifetime.
Absolutely. As I suppose you look at bands like, like yourselves, Failure have been going since the early 90s, and, dare I say it, longer than the Foo Fighters as well. It's like the Foo Fighters, they've spanned a really long career. But let's maybe have a chat about, so I know that it was, am I right in saying it was the second album that you joined Failure? Was that correct?
Yeah. I joined on Magnified. I joined in like somewhere around, I think, September of 1993.
Amazing. Well, what did the musical landscape look like back then? Because I know that, kind of we've got all this kind of mystique about like the early 90s. And
it was it was like the 90s. I mean, you had Nirvana, but in LA you had Tool and Rage Against the Machine and Failure, and it was definitely a richer landscape. I think people were a little bit more prone to try and do something different and express themselves.
Yeah.
I think, over the last 20 years, like the industry, or not the industry, but the people who decide, they're going to play music for a living, have a completely different, more like marketing type of approach to it, as opposed to, I'm this person and I have something to say, and my band and what it sounds like represents that more than necessarily, what's going to get a lot of Instagram or Facebook followers, which I think is what's generating record sales these days.
Absolutely.
It's definitely more, I think people are, and not that it's, good or bad. I mean, everything changes. And I certainly see in the 90s, a lot of bands weren't very smart in a business type of way. So I definitely don't poo-poo people getting a little smarter and learning how to, maybe market themselves or make a few dollars out of, what they're expecting to do for a living. It's unfortunate that for whatever reason, a lot of 90s bands really didn't know how to build a business, us included. We were fortunate that we got a second bite at the apple, and now we're adults. We've managed to, since we got back together, kind of like eke out, a pretty modest living doing it, which we needed to, because, we're all older, and like I said, those guys have families and I have dogs and we all have bills, and, it's not really something you can do unless, you can pay for what it costs.
Amazing. What was it that, thanks so much for that, Kellii. What was it that gravitated you and the guys all back together to start recording albums again after such a long period of time off?
Well, I mean, we all definitely retained our love for music and stayed active in all that time that we were broken up. I think it was somewhere around 17 years.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, children. Ken had a kid and Greg had a kid, and they knew one another and they were new fathers, and they kind of reached back out to one another and became friends, and started hanging out more and more because their children were best friends, and they were doing a lot of functions and, dinners and getaways and, the stuff parents do with each other.
Yeah.
And that just kind of brought them closer. And, at some point, I think the hatchet was kind of buried. And I think like probably 4 or 5 years in, Greg was just nonchalantly, proposed the idea of, what do you think of us just playing music together? Not for any reason, like let's just for shits and giggles, like let's play music and see what happens. And they did that for a little bit, and I think it was probably pretty immediate that they were, framing it like that was a good way for them just to have fun, and if it wasn't any good, like no harm, no foul.
Yeah.
But I think once they got into it, like they probably both realized pretty quickly that they still had that thing and a musical language that you don't find with just anyone.
Yeah.
And I think shortly after that, I got a missed phone call from Ken. And I just assumed maybe he was calling me to work on a record, maybe play drums on something that he was working on. I called him back, and, he more or less was like, well, I don't know if you know, but, Greg and I have been hanging out. And, I was like, no, I didn't know that, because we didn't really talk to each other very much. A little bit more than, never, but it was very seldom over the years. But as soon as he sent that, I kind of got an inkling of where he was going, and by the end of the call, he was like, well, we've been writing some songs and we're not sure what we're going to do with it. Maybe put out an EP or, who knows, but, do you want to hook up and you want to like see whatever this is through with us again?
Awesome.
And I said, yeah. And he sent me the music, and, I didn't anticipate when he sent me, of course, on the inside, I was like, oh, maybe this is cool. Maybe this isn't. And then he sent me the music, which made it more real. I had this really weird reaction. Like I kept listening to the music and listening to it and listening to it and listening to it. And, the only way I can explain it is I had so many mixed competing feelings and turmoil.
Right.
I think I had just finally dealt with, okay, this thing is gone and it's done and it's okay.
Yeah.
And it was shortly after that, I get this phone call saying, oh, well, we're going to do it all over again. So it was a lot. It was a lot. I had a lot of competing emotions. For whatever reason, I couldn't turn on that thing that, the second I start listening to something, I know exactly what it is and I can pick it apart and I can instantly decide whether it's any good or not.
Yeah.
I had completely lost all of those skills for this. It's never happened before. It was really weird. It was really, really weird. It was like I was listening to something completely alien. It wasn't until probably a couple weeks later when we got together. I think we did like either 4 or 5 songs that first day. It was pretty obvious that we were back and like something new was happening, yet something more refined, and we hadn't lost. It was like we just kept on playing, but better. Nobody was mad at each other anymore. We were all adults. Right? We liked being around each other again, and we were having a good time. And that's what became like the first 5 of the 18 songs that would be on that next record, The Heart is a Monster.
Awesome. So did it feel familiar when he came back to the fold with the band again? Did it feel...
it once I started playing the music, it clicked.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, okay, that's like instantaneously. As soon as I put on the headphones and started playing it, because up to that point I hadn't played it. My pre-production was just listening to it and learning, the arrangements. But yeah, once we started playing it and once all 5 songs, like by the end of the day, it was like, holy shit, we're a band again.
Absolutely. What about the touring as well? So I'm guessing touring in the mid to late 90s is very different to touring in, early 2010, 11, 12, 13 onwards,
Um, yeah, I mean, in a sense, I mean, in the late 90s, touring was us playing to like 50 to maybe 150 people on a good night.
Yeah.
Flash forward and you're playing to like 1,000, 2,000 crying people that know every single word every night.
Amazing.
So yeah, it was completely different in that sense. And I mean, that's everything. When you're out on the road, like, dragging your dying carcass around day after day after day after day after day for weeks on end, like, the one thing that you get is playing to a great audience.
Yeah.
So it was pretty rejuvenating. And honestly, like, the tours for all of our records are pretty much the same, but especially that first, like, 2014, like, We're Back. Like, there will never be a tour like that again. Like, it just had all of those things, like, Build It and They Will Come, like Field of Dreams, like a like a Spielberg movie.
Absolutely.
Where everyone's crying at the end, and it was crazy.
It was just so great just to see you guys back, after all those years. Because when I was a grunge kid, I'm in my late 30s, so kind of like it was just so nice. And then kind of I know the at the drive-in got back together as well, and Refused got back together. Absolutely, yeah.
They did when the money was right.
Yeah. But then again, I suppose as well, it's a whole new generation. But then again, I suppose you've got your fans from the 90s and all those guys. When you guys were touring into the ground and, like you said, playing those 150 capacity clubs. But then because we've got this crazy thing called the internet, people can find you, get into your music.
That's how it happened. Like, we went from 150 to 100 times that because of the internet, because of what was that first, like, file swapping software?
Napster.
Yeah, I mean, it was all of, like, people just passing mixtapes.
Yeah.
Old school mixtapes. I mean, that's exactly what happened.
Absolutely, man. So cool. Thanks for that, Kellii. So tell us, recording wise as well. So what kit are you playing at the minute, and how involved are you? And obviously we all know that Ken is like an awesome producer and mixer. How involved are you with the failure mixers when they happen, and what kit are you using, and the mics and all that sort of stuff?
When it comes to mics, I stay out of that. I show up with like 20 snare drums and 5 bags of cymbals and 2 or 3 drum sets. And, I make those choices. And I have essentially done a lot of pre-production and written new parts or come up with other ideas. But the second I show up, I mean, I'm there to kill it. I more times than not, like, I'll kind of go for it. But my idea of being the most useful in a studio is just knowing my shit and letting Ken and Greg use me. Because they're the ones sitting in the control room. Like, to me, everything feels really great because I'm so in it. But they're like hearing it, like in when I'm listening to it, it's like cannons going off in my headphones. It's really loud. It's super hard to concentrate, and I'm just in the moment and trying to be as energetic as possible to put as much of myself into the playing. I leave it up to them to tell what they like. That type of relationship I do the way I do it. And you know, my other main goal is, you know, I respect and I trust their opinions enough that I know they're going to make sure that my performances on the record are better than they were on the last record. You know, because that's how we roll. Like everything we do has to be a little bit better than the last thing we did. And I trust them to do that. You know, and that, I mean, that's one of the reasons that I love being in this band so much. Is there just all these things that normally you compete with as a player, especially in the studio, that I don't have to, because I have two people who can see and hear for me.
Yeah.
I just have to go in there and be myself and do my thing.
Absolutely amazing. Thanks so much for that, Kellii. What was it about drums that you fell in love with in the first place? You said that you're a big Kiss fan back in the day as a kid. What was it particularly about the drums that actually drove you that direction compared to any other instrument?
Well, I mean, there are a few things that keep me going, but initially, you know, I think it was a way for me to spill my inner emotional life, like things that, you know, for better or worse, no one taught me how to do. You talk about the way you feel or express the way, you know, like I didn't even know what feelings were, but they were in me and they were huge, and something was going on. And fortunately, it dovetailed with me starting to play music. It could be my brother beating my ass and being really upset and really mad and wishing I was bigger or wishing I didn't have to take, you know, everything, like life. You know, a girl marking no instead of yes on the love note that I passed her, or being smaller than everyone else, or, you know, it could be anything, but those things pile up and you carry them and add new things as you walk through life. You know, fortunately for me, I had drums, whether I knew it or not. That's where I was purging and spilling all that like inner turmoil. You know, and at first it was kind of like, you know, looking at the back of a Kiss record, like, I'm going to be rich and famous and all these people are going to love and adore me and they're going to tell me how great I am and everything's going to be okay. I won't feel so small anymore. You know, and I can do and say whatever I want. You know, I'll be special.
Yeah.
But, you know, as you grow older, you know, then it was like, oh, he's really good at it. And it became, you know, a source of, you know, fixing an inside problem with an outside thing, soliciting people praise, you know, but you don't feel like you're great. Other people will make you feel that for you, which, you know, eventually those things, they don't work. I mean, that isn't how you fix an inside problem. And, you know, and then I think maybe the next level was, you know, I just started to get really good at it. And it was something that I just really fell in love with. And I was very aware that nobody would ever be able to play drums like me. So I may as well just be the best.
Absolutely.
You know, or, I mean, there is no best. I'm the best at playing the drums like me because there's no one else on earth that can do it. You know, there's only a finite amount of notes that you can play. And the only thing you're going to do to change what everyone else has always and will always do is to play them like yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and I think my ability to do that came from so young, using music as a dumping ground and finding that inner voice, which, you know, I think unfortunately a lot of people aren't aware that, you know, the most beautiful thing you can do with music is connect in that way, you know, and offer something to, you know, people listening that they'll never hear before or again in their entire lives.
Absolutely agree with you. And you know what I love about your playing? It's so emotive as well. It's like you get so many drummers. You know, I just for fun. My main thing is I'm a mastering engineer, but for fun I've played in various punk rock bands over the years. And, you know, you get some drummers are like, you know, I have to play with a click, which is great. So you're perfectly in time and all that sort of stuff. But yet there's no emotion behind the kit and they don't bring their personality. What I really dig about your drumming is it's just so full of personality and it's so finely in tune with the other guys as well. So it brings that raw emotion of what Ken's trying to sing about as well at the same time as well. It's just, it clicks and it works, you know, but that's rare, man. It's rare that it works so well like that.
It's, you know, I think it's just a lot of hard work, some consciously and some unconsciously. You know, I mean, there's something to be said, like sticking with something like your life depends on it for, you know, 35 plus years, you know, and 2/3 of that, like the only thing you get out of it is the playing.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thanks so much for that, man. So I know there's a new Failure album coming out as well soon. I know that you've just finished it. Any news about the new album? Can you tell us anything about it yet?
Or? Yeah. We did finish it. We went, like, during the pandemic, we've kind of made it a habit to have these like usually like 3-week long jam sessions where we just come in every day and just jam on whatever. And record it all. We did that for this record, the last record, and we also did it for Fantastic Planet, I think is where it started.
Oh, cool.
Back in the day, we did it for Fantastic Planet because we just bought a bunch of recording gear, which we were using that scenario to learn how to record a record and use all this new gear that we had. But it since has like become a real thing in the way we sort of approach and get ready for a record. But we did about 30 hours of jamming, which through a lot of emails and Dropbox and endless hours of Ken going through all of this stuff and physically editing it down to like 3 hours.
Wow.
Then we kind of pour through it and like another 100 emails go back and forth with just each one of us having lists of parts that we really like.
Yeah.
You know, so when we start the actual writing of the record, we hone in on like, what are those parts that everybody has in common? And, you know, sometimes it's just a bar of music. Sometimes it's like, you know, in the case of the new record, almost the entirety of a song, or just a drum take for an entire song and rebuilding the music around that. You know, it can be any combination of stuff. But essentially that's sort of where everything starts to come from, those jam tapes. And on this new record, one of the things we hadn't done previously, usually everything gets written and then re-recorded in a studio environment. On this new record, we wound up actually keeping a lot of stuff from those initial jam sessions and then just writing and recording parts over top of those.
Amazing.
So there's a combination of us we went to 606 Grohl's Place.
Yep.
For, I think, 8 songs. Or 7 or 8 songs, and then the rest of the songs came directly from the jam tapes with like new guitar tracks or new bass tracks or new vocal, you know, whatever it needed to sort of bring it to life from the initial jams.
Amazing. Tell us more about 606 as well, as many of us obviously have never walked in there. So yeah, tell us about what it was like recording there.
It's definitely a drummer's studio.
Yeah.
It's probably one of, like, the room itself is really big, but I've played in lots of really big rooms. This room in particular is really loud. So that was quite an adjustment because I already wear in-ears and it was still super loud in the room.
Really?
Which requires me to turn up my ears like a bit louder than I would normally turn them up. So that kind of took a little bit of adjustment, you know, I think the first day. And also they use like little Mackie for the drum mixer.
Yeah.
And I had like all of my channels turned like all the way up to 8, 9, and 10. And didn't realize that, you know, because they're like singular channels, a mixing board, there's also the gains. So
Yeah.
part of the reason the first day I was having such a weird day is because I didn't turn up the gains at the ends of the channels.
Oh no.
So I was competing with the room sound because I wasn't getting enough level out of my ears,
Yeah.
which is totally fine. It worked for the first day. I played a little harder than I would have liked to, but I think it sounds really great on the record. You know, just one of those sort of serendipitous moments where the universe makes you do something and it's exactly what's called for.
Absolutely.
You know, I try not to overthink being in the studio. I think that can really be the enemy. I like to just stay really, really flexible, not get flustered and just be open, to playing something new, playing a lot of things I've never played before, even though I've done like
Yeah.
weeks of pre-production on this stuff. Because sometimes, few and far in between, but those can be like just sort of those really magic moments that no one anticipated.
Absolutely amazing. Thanks so much for that. How do you get yourself, I suppose, with a lot of producers, especially maybe new producers, trying to support bands and get the best out of them when they play and record? So, how do you make sure, or how do you try and make sure that you're in the zone and you're in the moment? Because obviously, we've all got so much shit going off in our lives, left, right, and center. How do you switch off from all of that and connect with the song and have that as your primary focus?
Um, a lot of it's preparation. Um, I think it's probably 30% preparation. I think it's probably 30% like, just believing in your skills.
Yeah.
10% like, you're allowed to make mistakes. I'm fine with that. Sometimes the mistakes, like I said, turn into these like really amazing moments that, no one could have anticipated. And I think the other 30% is, again, like I'm fortunate in that, I have complete trust with the guys that I work with.
Yeah.
As long as I show up to the studio prepared and ready to play. And I mean, I've been doing this for a really, really, really long time, under way more like grave circumstances than going to do another Failure record. I did sessions for Linda Perry for almost a decade, and that's like, if you don't cut it, you get fired.
Wow.
And I was doing that 5 days a week. It's like, oh, today we're doing Christina. Here's the song. Okay, go cut it. And it's like results are demanded.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of just practice being in high clutch situations and just being focused and, breathing. And it's knowing you've got this. Like there isn't anything, beyond your skill set. Just show up and focus and, you're going to do your best. And your best is all you can do. Anything beyond that is okay, and it's not your fault. That's kind of where I start everything from. So I don't psych myself out and get in my own head. And, that's just you. It's all about your attitude and openness. You got to like just be open and calm.
Yeah.
Just like live gigs.
Yeah.
Live gigs, it's like a perfection situation. Like if I go in there and start dropping sticks, it's like, thousands of people are going to laugh at me. I mean, they won't, but that's how you feel. It's a like high pressure clutch situation, and you treat it with the respect that it deserves. You prepare and you show up like ready to like be, a little bit better than you were the last time.
Absolutely amazing. Thanks so much.
There's no settling. You don't settle. I have yet to become as good as I'm going to become.
That's so cool. I really love that. What about live? So tell us some of your favorite live gigs that you've played with Failure and other bands over the years. What have been some of your favorite live moments?
I mean, that one's kind of hard to say. Like, I mean, I just love playing live. I'll have I'll have that moment where, you're showing up and you're playing to like 2 people.
Yeah.
And the difficulty in that situation is like, how am I going to play for these 2 people like they're 2 million? How am I going to make this matter as much as knowing that you only get to play drums one more time and that's it?
Yeah.
So it's all about the challenge of it for me. To flash forward to like when Failure got back together and we did that string of, 2014 shows, like, all these people know every single note, and that dawned on me quite early. So I learned every single note, which is something I never really approached before. Like I would learn the big moments on records and then save all these other moments for like just being inspired in the moment, and playing things just kind of, by the seat of your pants, and having every show be different every night. And that was a way of keeping myself interested week after week, month after month, year after year. So, on this occasion, like, I had to learn every single note for, now 4 records, which was a lot of material because I knew everyone was going to know that stuff, and I had to play it with just a level of expertise and perfection that I had never played anything live before, so that was its own challenge. And giving like, these people are like showing up and they've been waiting like almost 2 decades to see this moment.
Absolutely.
So, I think for me is, the greatest thing for me, I have stories about, the one time where I almost lit my cock and balls on fire because I used to smoke and I was playing and I couldn't stop. So I had to like pee my pants to put it out. Like, I mean, there's tons of like stuff like that.
Yeah.
But to me, I mean, the stories that are really worth telling about playing live, and I don't think they get told enough. I think most people probably go to, the funnier or ridiculous or, things like that. I mean, for me, I would say the moral of the story is I've never done a gig that wasn't like more important than, every other gig I did before that.
Yeah.
It's just a level of seriousness and respect for the band and the people that are showing up, who are showing up to be taken out of their lives. We all live lives and we all know like everything that goes into just being yourself and getting through this thing, with all the bumps and bruises and good times. But, there's a lot. People have a lot going on. And, it's a huge honor to like be given a moment of their life to ease them of that burden.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. It's like, as a gig goer myself, I want to be able to switch off from, the world and just be in that moment with not necessarily the band, but just be in that moment with the crowd and the song and, well, just everybody in that moment. And it's all like zoned into that feeling that everyone's kind of feeling at the same time to that one particular song, and that's the power of music. And I think that maybe, I don't know if you agree, but I think sometimes people forget the power of music and what it can actually do, how it can actually be life affirming in a moment as well when someone's had the shittest of weeks. But a song can kind of drive them to do something amazing, the next day maybe.
Well,
It's crazy.
it evens the scale back out.
Yeah.
It's I was going to make an analogy to like, your drug of choice, which it's similar in the way that, drugs are great and people do them for a reason because they do what they're supposed to do.
Sure.
Unfortunately, we don't have better tools in life to give people to deal with those moments so they don't have to destroy their lives with drugs.
Yeah.
But music is that same thing. Music was my first drug of choice.
Yeah.
You know, it brought me to that place where like everything was calm and quiet and okay, and better than okay. It was perfect.
Awesome.
You know, and playing music still is that thing. Like I call it, it's like when I'm playing being in the eye of a hurricane. You're completely separate from everything that goes on in your life, and it's completely quiet and calm, which the crazy thing about that is it's fucking loud and people are screaming, and it's none of those things, but it's all of those things at the same time.
Yeah.
It's I wish I had a better term for it. It's very like spiritual.
Yeah. Absolutely.
How it
But
can be the loudest and the quietest all at the same time when you're in that moment, you know, and doing like, you know, what we do right, where you're not like thinking your way through it, you know,
yeah.
and you're just completely unconscious and flowing.
Absolutely. And with drumming as well, with what you do live and in the studio, it's a lot of it. It's like I've talked to a few of my friends that are drummers, and they said it's just muscle memory. You just remember it. You know, you're in the zone. You remember all the patterns absolutely perfectly. But it's like for you coming back though, it's after, like you said, 4 albums worth of material. How the
Yeah.
hell do you remember all those fucking drum patterns, Kellii? How the hell do you do it?
Well, the thing is, well, I mean, the biggest thing is you listen.
Yeah.
You know, again, like there's definitely a musical language in the band. And there are, you know, if you're listening to everybody else, like it might not sound like it to people listening, but when you're within the band,
Hmm.
like there are certain, you know, how you have those people in your life that can finish your sentences. Music is like that, where,
Yeah.
you know, you're just so in tune with one another that like the language just flows out of you. And I mean, a lot of it is just, it's practice. You
Yeah.
know, for me, it was not only practicing and getting the muscle memory, but a lot of it is like practicing flying by the seat of your pants and going for it and doing something that you've never done before in this moment. You know, and those are the things that prepare you for when you forget a part or when you make a mistake. A mistake is only a mistake depending on what the next note you play is.
Yeah.
Or a
That's
mistake
good.
is only a mistake if you acknowledge it.
That's also good. Amazing. Absolutely love that. That's so cool. Thanks for that,
Well,
Kellii.
it's, you know, I mean, it's if you want to become the greatest musician in the world, like just play your instrument a lot and play with a
Yeah.
lot of musicians. Build your musical language by playing with musicians. You know, that's like the
Amazing.
one main asset that I've been afforded is, I mean, I couldn't even begin to name like all of the just seriously mind-blowing musicians with their own musical languages that I've been like privy and blessed to like share in playing with these some of these people. You know, and it's not necessarily a skill set, like whether they're great or just starting out. I've learned just as much from like, you know, playing with kids at School of Rock,
Yeah.
you know, or relearned things that I had forgotten because I'm so far from when I first started playing.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Talking about that. So tell us about some of the, other than failure, tell us about some of your favorite projects that you've been involved with. I know that before we went live, we had a chat about a super group that you were involved with at some point when you went over and played at Rock City in Nottingham, where I'm
Oh,
from originally.
um,
But yeah, tell us
that
more
that
about some of the projects.
let me see. I mean, one of the coolest things was definitely being Linda Perry's session drummer.
Yeah.
And getting to play with like, you know, the Scissor Sisters one week and KT Tunstall the next week, and you know there was just all this huge like cattle call of just extremely talented people that would come through there like every day, 5 days a week for years,
Wow.
and being in like a just a high uh, like a clutch situation where you have to be on your best at every moment, because that's what's required and expected of you.
Yeah.
And you learn how to expect that of yourself pretty quickly. And then there's, I mean, we were talking earlier, like Eric Melvin and I did some punk rock stuff. We had this little project called Bugs back in the
Nice.
90s called Bacteria Under Guided Supervision. And we did a couple songs for different charity records. Because he and I were really good friends. And it was like, someone was like, hey, I got this charity record. Oh, perfect. Run into Eric on the coffee shop near the house. Dude, you want to put together this thing and let's do this thing, again, like access is everything. Or, going up to Tom Morello's barbecue back in the 90s and like jamming out with Tom and Warren DeMartini from Rat.
Nice.
And, what was that other guy's name? The harmonica player, singer, John Papa?
Yeah.
And him, like, and just having this weird like blues jam for 40 minutes.
That's cool.
There's so many of those moments where they're like suit and tie moments, or you just show up in the right time in the right place, and people are just kind of thrown together to create these new and beautiful things. Playing with the Queens for I guess it was maybe like a couple months, and Troy back to Foo Fighters. They were just and I'll preface this by, I wound up getting not necessarily fired. I knew going into it that they wanted Joey to be in the band, but he was out with Danzig. And I came in, and it was immediately like right into the frying pan. Like I had to learn all 5 records in a couple days and like start playing because we were leaving on tour in 2 weeks. But yeah, it's just funny. Like everybody was doing their thing, and difference. Like this was a completely mess scenario. I was a mess. I 2 days before the tour, Josh called me and was like, dude, you're awesome, and this had nothing to do with you, but Joey's back in town and we're gonna take him out on tour. He's like, what do you need? Like, I know you gave up your place and you're ready to go out on tour. And it was cool. He like paid me for my time, and he called me up, man to man, and was like, this is the deal. Whereas most people would have had, some faceless person over at management go, hey, you're not getting the gig, or, whatever.
Yeah.
But, he and I were friends before that, and we remain friendly, and I thought that was a really solid thing that he did. And in hindsight, like he and the rest of the band, they knew I had a drug problem. I think it became really obvious to them, and they were like, he could be a liability. Like Joey's back in town. Like, let's just do this with Joey. Yeah. I didn't know that until years later. I just thought it was like, cause they wanted Joey, but it had a lot more to do with, I was an obvious liability. That being said, I was pretty far gone. I mean, I was still playing really well, but I was a mess. And they definitely saved my life.
Wow.
If I had that kind of drug problem and I was in like, the next biggest band in the world, like I probably would have killed myself.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. I was really, really fortunate that I didn't get that gig.
That's absolutely mad. So what happened like kind of after that? So the Queens thing?
I went to rehab shortly after that.
Right.
Shortly after that, a friend was like, yeah, dude, you're killing yourself. You might want to like figure out how to stop doing, heroin all the time. So I went to the rehab for the first time ever. Didn't really know what it was or how it worked, or which I think helped me a lot, that I didn't have any preconceived notions, and I didn't really have anybody in my life that I could ask. Fortunately, I went in as kind of like a blank slate, and for whatever reason it stuck. Like I've never been fucked up in the 17 years since.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool, man. And as well, do you think that, you know, coming off the drugs, do you reckon your playing has like massively improved as well, to be fair? Do you reckon?
You know, I mean, in ways, I mean, shortly before I got sober, like after the Queens thing, I went in the studio and we did some sessions with Lindsey Buckingham was producing, and he actually
Right.
played on a lot of the stuff with us. It was when I was in Blinker the Star.
Yeah.
And you know, that was probably one of my most messed up moments. Like I remember just going to the bathroom like every 20 minutes to get high again and just being wasted. Plus smoking pot with him like all day long. And you know, shortly after I got sober, like I can't remember whether I found like an old cassette of those sessions or maybe Jordan reached out to me and gave me a copy of it, but I was playing phenomenally. Like I was playing with Lindsey Buckingham. Like, you know, he and I were in a band together.
Yeah.
So, you know, I can't speak to whether I'm a better drummer or not, or whether I've improved because of it. You know, I don't know. What I can say is I'm certainly much, much more aware of what I'm doing when I'm doing it. But more importantly, I can recite you every single thing I did after I've done it, which isn't something that I could do when I was loaded. When I was loaded, it just came out and it was to be never experienced or thought about again. That isn't why I was playing music, you know,
No.
to remember it. I was playing it to like spill out all this horribleness that was deep inside of me.
Yeah. Oh. Sorry, guys. I think we've just gone silent for a mo. Kellii should be back in a sec. Second. Okay. Just going to try and get Kellii back on. Won't keep you long. We are live after all. Okay. I just want to say thank you so much for joining as well this evening. It's been absolutely fantastic having a chat with Kellii. We're just going to see if we can just reconnect with Kellii Scott from Failure. So won't keep you guys long. Be back in a moment. Oh, I think we're here again. Hey, Kellii.
Yeah. Sorry. I didn't realize my laptop was plugged in, but the battery wasn't.
Oh, no. Oh, that's all right.
Yeah, and with all this stuff going on, I wasn't getting my low battery warning.
Oh, no.
Apologies. So you know, just to pick up where I left, it's just different.
Yeah.
You know, it's different. And you know, there's definitely something to be said about being completely unconscious to what you're doing and just spewing it out on the world, you know, and just leaving it there and never revisiting it and moving on until you get to do it again. Whereas now, you know, there's a lot of preparation and there's a lot of just like memory of like every moment and every note. And, you know, it's different. It's different. Yeah. It's, you know, it's older, maybe more mature. Like I'm an adult now. Maybe it's a sign that that's just another part of, you know, me taking serious what I do, you know, putting down childish things and picking up, you know, adult tools, probably.
To be fair, though, I don't think I was thinking about this the other day. It's like, I watched my son play with all his toys, and I remember as a kid thinking, "Oh, I'll never grow out of toys." But I think that guys don't ever grow out of toys. I think we've always got stuff that, you know, we enjoy doing, and you know, there's always like things that you want to tinker with. But
yeah,
outside of drumming, what sort of other stuff do you enjoy doing, man? What sort of things do you really like?
You know, I like I like doing different stuff. Like I'm really attracted to doing things that I've never done.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, it can be, you know, something thrill seeking, like, on my birthday, like during the pandemic, I went on one of those motorized gliders. Like I
Oh, cool.
took a trip
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
out over the ocean down south along the coastline, and then sort of
Nice.
back up across the continent.
Yeah,
But it's like a full on like airplane glider.
yeah,
You know, that was pretty amazing. Like I definitely like things that keep the heart pumping,
yeah,
adrenaline type stuff. But I also like, like this morning, getting up, early and going to see like a good friend's just sweetest, greatest kid in the
yeah.
world, going out to support him playing baseball.
That's
And it
amazing.
meant the world to him. Apparently, he was like, just kept asking, like, are they here yet? Are they here yet?
Yeah,
And it was just really kind of like one of those special, awesome moments. I like to be a part of life.
yeah.
Um, oddly, I don't know if you know this, like a little over a year ago, like last year, I was diagnosed with cancer.
Yes, I heard. Yeah,
And, like those types of moments where, it's completely overwhelming, but it's also this thing like I've never been sick before. I've never been in a hospital before. I'm in
yeah,
really good health at the time. I eat only plant-based. My wife had gotten me into yoga and like I'm pretty fit. And recognizing like, well, if this is ever going to happen to you, like this is the perfect moment for it to happen to you.
yeah,
And I take care of myself, and I'm very proud of that. And I'm very proud that because I do that, I caught it super early. So it was pretty minimal. Like I don't have the total horror story of, I mean, it was cancer, and I had to go under a knife, and they had to cut like parts of my. But as far as like great experiences go that like change your life forever,
yeah.
um, I mean, that's like one of the most like, top 5 precious moments of my entire life, that has
Wow.
fundamentally changed me forever. And just the way I approach things, like as soon as before my feet hit the floor every morning, I start my day with like, thanks for what I have, thanks for what I don't. And try and just approach things, and, try and stay unjudgmental. Older now, and like you've seen it all. It's a skill unto itself to like keep life precious and new from one day to
Yeah,
the next.
love that. That's so cool. It's like it's crazy. I see quite a lot of, so I hear about a lot of stuff. It's like my other half, she's a midwife. So she kind of tells me about, kind of crazy moments where, this baby was literally dying in the back of an ambulance and she resuscitated this baby and brought it back to life, and she like day in, day out, with COVID, kind of goes out, obviously, it's, settled down, hopefully, touch wood, a lot more than what we've had, the horror story that we've had to go over the last few months. But it's people are go out there and risk their life. But she loves what she does, and she gets up every day. And like you said, your feet hit the floor in the morning, and you're like, right, today I'm going to live my life and have an awesome day. And what you guys do and what you do is like you create music that is the soundtrack to those people that do these crazy jobs
Yeah,
and look after people. They need music in their lives
yeah,
to support them, but they also need like whatever your faith thing is, or if you're you believe in the earth, whatever it is, just to have faith in something as well, and to have like that spiritual vibe to kind of keep you going as well, man. That's awesome. That's so
well, and I
cool.
mean, it's little things like I'm sure like your wife would know this, like
Yeah,
especially something like that can be pretty thankless.
yeah,
Sometimes it's only you that gets to say how important it is that what you do for
yeah,
the world. But
absolutely.
I mean, it's like little things too. It's like every night at midnight, like I go on my Facebook and I go through like who's having a birthday today and wish
That's
them happy
cool.
birthday. Like I've done that every single night for, probably a decade, however long I've been on Facebook.
Yeah.
And it's like, if Tommy Lee like reached out to me when I was 12 or 20, or John Bonham when I was 30, or, whatever, like I'd be stunned. Like it was just my whole that moment of seeing that would be just awesome. And
Absolutely.
sometimes that's like all you can do. It's about like, you're given moments every day to just make everything a little bit better. And then tomorrow you get to start all over again. And I'm fortunate that I also have like this big thing in my life, music, where, every couple of years, like we get to put out something new. But there's, in between, like there's all this other stuff. Like I do these sessions now where I don't know if you've seen that. Like, I had this software gig and they finally like laid me off. And instead of like freaking out about how I'm going to pay for my health care and my bills and I was like, well, you didn't want to be doing that anyway. It was just a means to an end. Like you liked the job and you were really good at it. That was cool. But see if you can play drums. So I just like put out this Facebook post 2 hours later and woke up to 25 gigs. And then, the next day, another 30 gigs. And, that was in February.
Yeah.
And 2-3 days a week, like I'm doing like 10 to 15 songs every single week since.
Nice.
For dirt cheap. And it's like, you can't discount like what it means to someone who like plays music in a band somewhere else or just as a hobby or, whatever, to be able to like walk into someone's life and share that moment with them is, it's as great or even better than anything else that I've had the privilege to share in. It's been really, really amazing. And for me, like seeing how people interpret music is pretty like magical.
Yeah.
Like I never really like, I know there's lots of different bands and their approach to stuff, but like everyone, like people with just a iPad to, dudes in their living room being a mad scientist to like professional dudes to like, it's just all over the place in every country around the world. I'm getting these submissions and it's just, it's pretty beautiful. Like to see the richness and the variety of how people approach music and how it sounds different and how people interpret music from person to person. Like it's pretty amazing. It's like you get to see like country.
So I think,
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think it cut out for a sec. Sorry, Kellii.
There you are. I was just kind of doing that and seeing how all these different people approach and play and interpret music is a lot like being on that Disney ride. It's a Small World.
Yeah.
Where you like travel through like all the countries and like all the different indigenous people are like trying to describe to you what it is to live in their country.
Yeah.
It's sort of like that. Like it's my own little, it's a small world ride through COVID.
Dude, that's amazing. That's so cool. And I've heard some of the I've listened to some of the stuff that you've done with some of these people sending through their songs. The musicianship is insane. It's absolutely crazy.
Dude, there's been a couple guys, like one dude gave me this submission. It was like I don't know, probably like an 8-minute song, like modern metal, sort of operatic metal, probably 22 different parts in 22 different time signatures, nothing repeating.
That's crazy.
It was pretty challenging, but at the end of it, like you're like, holy shit. It's one of those moments where like, you realize like there isn't anything that if you don't if you apply yourself to it, like you can get through like anything. Like that obviously isn't my forte. Like I love straight up metal. I'll play the shit out of metal. Like I grew up listening to metal.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, there's just a guy last week sent me a 6-minute song that was, it was game music. It was like something him and his friend have this video game that they've loved, like since they were kids. It's called Nighthawk or something.
Okay.
And they had written this fictitious music to it.
Yeah.
So they sent me the demos for that to lay down drums, and it's basically like a melody of parts over 6 minutes. And they're just like, you know, da 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 da. You know, it's like all over the place with different like time mapping changes all over the place. You know, and then there's just like really simple stuff and straight up like Failure-esque, like 90s kind of rock stuff, and did some country stuff. Like it's really cool. It's all over the place. I never know what I'm gonna get.
Well, I bet it's really fun as well, though, the fact that you're just getting different genres coming to you left, right, and center as well.
Yeah.
So like, oh, here's a new challenge today. And
well, I think it helped with the latest recordings of this Failure record also, because I was playing so much and was just so limber and just really fluid in my playing every day for, you know, a few months leading into beginning to do like a week of pre-production on my own and then going into record. Like we had, I think, 5 days to do drums.
Oh, wow.
And we were done with drums in 3.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So we spent like the 4th day just recording instruments, like getting live feedback stuff because we don't use amps.
Yeah.
And a few overdubs here and there. And Greg actually recorded a whole guitar piece in the 606 studio as well. The new record's going to be phenomenal.
Oh man,
it is
can't wait.
So good. As like the number the fan, like it's a really good record.
Amazing, man. Can't wait to hear. Are you guys planning on, dare I say, going out doing any gigs anytime soon as well to support the new record? Is there anything planned as yet? Oh, I think you're breaking up a bit there, Kellii.
Now?
Yep, you're good. Cheers, man.
Bueller?
Yeah. Sorted.
Bueller? We were initially planning to do start touring in March for a couple of weeks, like 5 or 6 weeks.
Okay.
But then we realized that it's going to take us 8 months to get vinyl.
Wow.
And we didn't really see much point in going out on the road if we didn't have like our physical product to sell.
Yeah.
So and you know, this new Delta variant was just like hitting us and really crazy here in the States. So I honestly, like, I've got no desire to put any of our fans in jeopardy.
Yes. Yeah.
I certainly don't want to put myself in jeopardy, but we're in the band. We can stay away from everyone. We can just play and then leave.
Yeah.
But it's all those other people that have to be in close proximity and breathing and sweating and screaming and singing on top of each other. Like, you know, I would be heartbroken, to say the least, if someone came to one of our shows and got sick and died.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have an easy time dealing with something like that. So we've decided that we're not even going to begin to think about doing anything until probably June.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're planning on
doing. We'll also have like a physical record, and it will have already been released for probably like a month or two. But we're actually getting together tomorrow, the 3 of us, just to kind of sit down and put together a plan of how we want to sort of spread out the release of this, and in what way do we want to set it up, and, you know, start sort of trickling it out and teasing people and then putting it on for sale and doing a pre-order for vinyl and all that kind of stuff, which is what we normally do.
Yeah. So cool. Love that. I mean, have you, I know some other bands have done it. I think Korn has recently done it where they did like a entire live gig online. So are you guys thinking about doing anything like that maybe, where you kind of stream a live gig to your fans or something like
No,
that? Or
we're way too 3D of a band.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think, especially with newer stuff, I don't know if that would necessarily be the best look for the first time for our fans to like hear new stuff would be like on your laptop.
Yeah.
We have entertained, but when the pandemic hit, we were supposed to do these shows where, we had just released that vinyl box set of all the old records.
Yeah.
We were supposed to do 3 nights in LA, a record a night, 3 nights in Chicago, a record a night, and 3 nights in New York over 3 consecutive weekends. But those eventually got canceled. We were kind of entertaining, maybe doing those as breakout video performances, or maybe some kind of DVD package, or, who knows? We're still kind of kicking it around. We've always sort of got a bunch of things on, all the burners at any given moment. We're like going, well, now we're done with the record. So what's going on with this idea? We've also been working on this documentary for a couple of years.
Awesome.
So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff and possibilities going on. We may get into something like that. Maybe perform Comfort from start to finish, because we did learn all that stuff in preparation. But we kind of slipped into the jam sessions for this new record when all that got canceled instead.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Thanks so much, man. Before you go, tell us, it's amazing that you guys...
Wait a minute. Are you kicking me off? Are you kicking me off?
No.
We've been talking. No, I think you subtly just said, I'm going to ask you one more thing before you have to go.
No.
I never said I have to go anywhere.
Cool, let's hang there, man. That's fine. Well, actually, I've got a question for you then about vinyl. So obviously you guys, you do, you've got some amazing vinyl out at the minute, and I know that you're planning on releasing the new album on vinyl as well.
Yes.
To you, what is it about vinyl that has actually helped with this resurgence of vinyl? I mean, I'll tell you a very quick story. I was literally in Manchester. I was just walking past HMV. I'm like, what are all those guys queuing up for? And it was literally like a limited edition HMV vinyl that was coming out that day at 9 o'clock, and it sold out within half an hour. But what is it about vinyl that has captivated a brand new audience to it? Because it's kind of like vinyl was obviously there, and then everyone bought tapes, then everyone bought CDs, and now everyone's like, as well as like streaming everything, everyone's like, actually, I love vinyl. So is there a particular sound to vinyl, do you think? Or what is it about vinyl you think that people have fallen in love with again?
Well, I mean, we release vinyl. We're a vinyl band. Like, all of our records are double records.
Yeah.
So for us, it's about a singular experience of the music and opening the gatefold and the story. And the whole package, it's completely different than any of the cheaper forms that, was just a ploy for record companies to have to spend less money so they could make more.
Yeah.
Because they keep getting further and further away from good sound quality. Streaming will never sound anywhere near as good as a CD, and CDs never sounded anywhere near as good as a cassette tape. And cassette tapes will never sound as good as an 8-track tape, and none of it sounds as good as a vinyl.
Yeah.
So, it's all about, the business kind of made all of those things happen, and I think there's like from the 90s on, there's a large section of people who really missed out on the experience of like how to live, listen, and see music in the privacy of your own home and get like the story with it, and reading all the liner notes, and not having to pull out a magnifying glass to like read it off of the back of a CD, or you know what I mean? It's like it's living and breathing Maybe having your fingers in your ear, only seeing it, or having your hands over your eyes and only hearing it. It's like that. Like, you get a picture that you don't get with any of the other ways of selling music formats.
Completely agree.
But
It's so cool.
We're a vinyl band. I think we're fortunate that like vinyl has caught on, but for us, in the same way that we don't write and play the music we play because people exist. We have a certain idea of what we want our music to be like and what we want it to sound like when we give it to people. And we want them to have access to the best quality, the quality that we're listening to when we play it and record it and finish it, or at least the closest. They're not going to go into the studio and hear it at Dave Grohl's place, but they're going to get the next best thing. And it's all about the execution of the whole thing. And vinyl for us is an opportunity to like give, it's becoming more and more people, but at the very least, like a certain sliver of the audience, an experience that's like the best you're going to get out of this thing we created. That's what it means to us. And yeah, it's fortunate that vinyl, like, people are really starting to get into it. Like, I've never not been into it. When I was a child, like, I said earlier, my dad we grew up on Navy bases. He was on submarines. So we were always near the water, which meant there was always hurricanes. So as part of the Navy housing, we always had a hurricane room in the middle of the house. And that's where the family stereo system was. Because you could close the door and it was bricked in, so you could turn it up as loud as you wanted and experience music. So I have always listened to vinyl. To me, like, that's the sweet spot of going out and buying a new record and just soaking it up, and experiencing it at its best as me, a consumer, going out and buying it. The best I'm ever going to get to experience the audio and the story is to have like it in my hand, legible and sounding at its best.
Absolutely agree. And what I used to love as a kid, I'm sure you were the same as well, either with vinyl or CD, is I would literally go to probably the late 90s, early noughties. I would just go to a counter in a record shop in the punk rock section or the metal section, wherever I was, and just looked at the front cover of the vinyl or the CD, go, well, that looks cool. I didn't know what the band were like, but I would literally just go to the counter, get the guy to play it for like 10, 15 seconds and go, that's cool, I'll buy it. And that was it. That was me sold. But it's just, dude, I miss those days. That was so cool.
And it's funny you said it. Reminds me of a story. So I'm in high school working at Robinson's department store selling women's shoes to save money to move to LA after I graduate.
Yeah.
And it was in the Florida Mall. So they had Camelot music records and tapes. And I would go down there on my lunch break and look at the hard rock new release wall every day. And there's this band called Guns N' Roses. What a cool name. But then I pick up the record and I'm like, wow, look at this cover. And it was the Live Like a Suicide cover. And they had the awesome Guns N' Roses logo with the two guns and the roses. And, it just, I had no idea what they sounded like. But because of the way it looked, like I completely went out on a limb and was like, I've got to have this. Like, as much so as someone who I loved releasing a new record. Like this, I've got a feeling about this based on the way it feels and looks that I'm going to love this and I've got to have it. And sure enough, I mean, I was right. Like those first two records, soon after the Appetite for Destruction, were like brilliant 80s records. But that was all like just because of the way that record looked and felt when I held it in my hand, not knowing what the hell it was. And I mean, there was
Absolutely.
tons of bands like that I got turned, like Slayer. I remember like seeing the old Slayer records. Like, I loved Fangora magazine and just Gore, and was like, what the hell is this? Metallica. Like, I didn't know what a Metallica was, and then I like took a chance, and because of the way it looked and felt, and brought it home and was like, whoa, like, this is amazing.
Absolutely. It's my mum and dad, they were quite strict with my upbringing, like kind of what music I listened to. If I brought home a vinyl or a CD with a parental advisory sticker on it, my dad straight away was like, read through the lyrics. Nope, you're not having that. And that was just the way they were.
Yeah.
However, and I've told a couple of people this. I spoke to Tim Palmer about this a few months ago when I interviewed him. So it was really cool to have a chat with him about, mixing tan with Pearl Jam and all that sort of stuff. But my parents didn't let me listen to Pearl Jam 10. The way I discovered that music is I actually learned it from my guitar teacher. And I just said, I've seen this really cool album cover. My parents won't let me listen to it. Can he teach me the song? So I actually learned how to play the song on guitar before I actually even heard it. Yeah. So it doubly blew my mind because I got the chance to actually listen to the actual song, but I already knew it and I'd felt the song because I'd already learned it on guitar in the first place. So it's maybe a bit of a backward way of doing it. But now a kid can, as you know, can just go on YouTube or Spotify or whatever and just go click. Oh,
yeah. I mean, I didn't have, my parents just encouraged me to play music. They could see it was like something that was doing like good things for me. I was staying out of trouble and I was like really focused and into something. But they didn't stick their nose into what I was listening to or not listening to. But that being said, it was before all of those lawsuits and Tipper Gore and her parental advisory crap. And, none of that really existed yet. And my dad he was a huge purveyor of like all music and knew like, the content of all the stuff that he loved and know that it didn't turn him into like some kind of like kook. The link between the music you listen to and mass murder or suicide, or like there wasn't one.
Yeah.
Like if you took the music away, like people are just people. It doesn't have that much of an influence on you. So I don't think even if there was a parental advisory sticker, they wouldn't have bought into that,
No.
But yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. I had a guitar player, this kid, David Gondia, who was like the first person that I jammed with in Orlando, Florida, when we were in like 7th grade. My mom would take me to his house or his mom would take him to my house. We'd like go back and forth. And we started out like playing all the AC/DC songs. That was something we both all knew.
Yeah.
But then like we moved into Ozzy and, like Rat and Iron Maiden and, old Scorpions, like He's a Woman, She's a Man. And, but it was a lot like that. Like he would turn me on to stuff. I would turn him on to stuff. And as you meet other musicians, we actually, one thing they did have when I was a kid, they had Rad, Rockers Against Drugs. And they would put like rockers with obvious drug problems on MTV. I think it was part of their court-ordered punishment that they had to do these advisory things for kids to stay in school and don't do drugs. But like high profile, like the singer of Motley Crue had just killed the drummer from Hanoi Rocks. So he had to do some Rad commercials on MTV as part of his punishment.
Crazy.
But anyway, we had, me and a group of friends who were all musicians, this group in high school called Radup, which was Rockers Against Drugs, except the German metal band Pot. Right. And what we would do is we would all sit around and smoke pot. And each one of us was responsible for bringing a new piece of music into the group every time we got together. So like one guy would bring in Kate Bush and another guy would bring in like, a Cameo. She's talking out the side of her neck, or like really diverse stuff. And we would just sit around and smoke pot and just like listen to these records like picking them apart as music. Oh my God, you hear that vocal melody, or, just craziness, but it was really cool.
Absolutely. And I think, probably sound quite old saying it, but it's like kids, they're not going to get the same vibes. Nowadays, like you said, there's a lot of clever ways that bands can get their music out there. I did have a chat with someone about this maybe about a month or so ago, but as well, it's like, how do bands actually these days get heard above the noise? Because, I know that everyone these days, they can write their own music and they can go into a studio or even do it on their own laptop.
Yeah.
But how it's so tough for kids to actually grow a fan base without money behind them, without big labels behind them.
I don't know if it's really changed all that much.
Yeah.
Because even back in the day, like I moved here in the like mid 80s, and there were like 100,000 bands vying for space just in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And you had to be the lucky guy that got a record contract and a bit of money behind you. And then it got to, labels started to sign people because they had fan bases built in, and they would release an indie record first, so it had cred, and then they would release like their first major and do this progression thing, which I always thought was stupid. But then, I think the delivery system has changed and been modified, but I think the odds of you breaking out above the herd have pretty much stayed the same. It's few and far in between. It's like 1 out of every 10 million bands is going to make money for a year.
Yeah.
And another like 1 out of 100 million bands is going to have a career longer than 5 years.
Absolutely.
And, I mean, I think the statistics are the same. I just think because we have all of this internet stuff, you and I are more hyper aware of how many bands there are now. There have always been this many bands. It's just most of them never leave their little small town. And then, there are thousands, tens of thousands more that never leave their state. And then there are like, millions more that never leave the country. So, and there are like hundreds of millions of bands all across the world. And there kind of always have been. There probably are more now at any given moment because it's so much more accessible. Like you don't necessarily need to have any marketable talent anymore outside of knowing what a good hit formula sounds like and recreating that thing.
Yeah.
You can be more assured that someone will go, oh, this sounds like a pop song on the radio. Let's give it a try. But I think the death rate is probably essentially the same as it's always been. There's just more people in general.
Yeah.
The further we go from being like, there were only, say 1 million kids when I was a kid. And then there were 10 million kids when you were a kid. And now there's like, 100 million kids. There are more people, and there are greater tools that allow you and I to know just how many more people there are. I think that's the only thing that's changed. We're more aware of who's winning and who's failing now.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree.
Where before we only knew who the winners were.
Absolutely. But I think as well, kind of going back to the record shop scenario, there was a mystique behind bands as well, because you would actually paint pictures in your head and create stories maybe with your friends, like, what it was like to be in that band, or, what they were experiencing and what do the lyrics mean and all that sort of stuff. Now it's like, when your favorite band has been to the toilet, on Twitter or whatever. It's just like there doesn't seem to be as much as that mystique there anymore. I don't know if you agree.
Again, I'm gonna be honest. Like, I started playing music because I needed to get noticed.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to give me something that I didn't already have, and it was going to fix me. And I had to physically go out and pursue that thing and move 3,000 miles away and pursue it in the music industry in Los Angeles. Now you can do it from home, but you still have that same drive and that same like drug mentality where you need your self-esteem fortified by an outside force from one moment to the next.
Yeah.
So you have the ability to let everyone see every moment in real life and get instant feedback. We didn't have that. I don't think it's changed. I think we've always, like, kids today are exactly the same as like kids when I was a kid and when you were a kid.
Yeah.
It's just, again, now there are these tools that, if I had a Facebook back when I was 12, who knows? Maybe I would have been doing the same thing. I mean, maybe not. I'd like to think not.
Yeah.
In general, like, I wasn't really into the idea of living my life that out loud. I think my fear of everyone knowing everything is what turned into being mysterious and cool.
Yeah.
It wasn't that I was trying to be mysterious and cool. I had a rather hard time connecting with people in a vulnerable place.
Right.
And it was perceived as mysterious and cool. Some people actually have, like, I'm going to be mysterious and cool as a marketing tool.
Yeah.
But also, like, there just wasn't the access. Who's to know that, like, Led Zeppelin wouldn't be, like, on their phones 24 hours a day, beaming you into their, like, bathroom.
Absolutely.
We don't know because none of those tools existed. Probably, at least one of the guys in the band had a huge hole in, him that needed to be filled. And, that sounds like as good a way as any to, to get positive feedback, to prop up your, self-esteem and your, like, the way you think about yourself.
Absolutely agree. What's so important as well, that I've talked to a few engineers over the last few months about this and a couple of musicians as well. But I think what's amazing is the fact that mental health, people are actually now openly talking about mental health, especially men as well, because I know that guys would just be like, oh, I can't talk about my mental health. Whoa. It's like, it's taboo. But the fact now that people can open up and talk about it, it's surely got to be a great thing.
When I was taught all of the same things. Like, those things are handed from one guy to another, from dads to sons and friend to friend, or a cool guy to, I want to be like him. However you get it. A lot of bad information was passed around for a long time. And I know from personal experience that when I was afforded the chance to get clean and not die, part of the bargain that I had to make in order to fulfill what that was asking of me, I had to do something in order to get sober. You don't just, like, stop using drugs and all of a sudden get to be sober. Like, you have to trade in all your own garbage and pick up a bunch of new stuff that's really scary, because it's the complete polar opposite of everything that you've been told your whole life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, one of my first things was like, you're not going to be able to get sober until you're broken down and helpless enough that you can ask another man for help and do everything that he says. That's called humility. If you don't have that ability, you will not get and stay sober, and chances are you're going to die, like all the other millions of people dying right now. And for me, I was sufficiently afraid of dying, because I knew that was next on my dance card, that I was just going to do everything that I was told. And I did it, and I did it, and I did it. And eventually I started to feel and see this shift in the way my life looked and smelt and felt. and more importantly, the way I felt about myself.
Yeah.
Because that in turn, like, made me feel a certain way about the idea of ever like getting fucked up on drugs or alcohol to get away from not being myself.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was like, all right, here's another one. What are your deepest, darkest secrets? The things that you find embarrassing or scary. If you don't tell that to another man that you don't really know, you're not going to be able to get sober.
Yeah, you're right.
That's like a really, really scary thing, because I'm going to tell him all these horrible things I've done, and he's going to tell this person and that person. Maybe he will. That isn't what matters. Because, first of all, he's telling a bunch of people that have got worse things in their story, because we're all a community of people that have done horrible things to wind up where we've wound up. So who gives a shit? Like, your story is not the worst story someone's going to hear.
Absolutely right.
And irregardless of what anyone else thinks, if you don't do this and get it outside of you, you're not going to be able to get and stay sober. So, you know, I'm very happy to see like that sort of like wall coming down in regular society. You know, I've got something that at first I had to do because my life depended on it. And now I do as a matter of like, that's the way you're supposed to live. You're supposed to be open, free, and honest, you know, because you never know when like someone you're talking to has a drug problem that they're hiding.
Yeah.
And they're going to go, holy shit, what did this guy just say? You know, and then they pull you aside before you like leave lunch to tell you if they got a problem, can you help them? You know, or whatever it is. Like if you're not open and honest with people about your experience and who and what you are, that means like what's great about you and what you're still working on. Like there's no way to like just bond with the human race. You know, by myself, I'm this strong. With another person, I'm twice as strong. With another person, I'm 3 times as strong. With a community, I'm completely unstoppable. Like that's what a superhero is.
Absolutely agree. When my dad told me this analogy about, it's quite deep, but about coal, he said if you literally just got one piece of coal, it's like that piece of coal isn't going to do that much. But if you've got a whole like hundreds or thousands of pieces of coal, and you light it all up, you can create a furnace. You know, that's your community.
Yeah.
You know, so it's more powerful. You know, so absolutely, man, completely agree with you. It's like sharing is such an important thing. And my other half, as well as being a midwife, she also supports women with mental health.
Yeah.
You know, so this might be quite a deep subject, but this might be a lady that's like, you know, lost 2 or 3 kids to the system through, you know, their past or abusive partners or whatever it may be. But her job is to get that lady in the right mindset to get over the drugs or whatever she's been through, or the alcohol abuse or whatever, to then actually be in the mindset to actually look after that child. And that's what she does. So it's quite a new thing.
To write a new story.
Yeah.
You're not what you did. You are what you do in front of you.
Yeah.
You can change everything. And then there are certain things you can go back and make amends. Like you can make all that stuff back there okay.
Yeah.
But you also, from one day to the next, get to start writing your own story. I ran recovery homes for 6 years.
Really?
Where I would take in like kids from 16 all the way up to like 60-year-old men. And they would live in my house 24 hours a day. And it was my job to like show them how to live successfully, to where like they didn't need to do drugs to feel different because they liked the way they felt. And they had new tools that if they started to feel like they didn't want to feel, they could change those feelings with new tools that work.
That's so cool. That's
and with a community of people.
That's great. What was it that spurred you on to actually do that in the first place?
Again, like being sufficiently afraid of dying. You know, another part was getting sober is like, okay, check it out. I'm going to help you get through this thing. I'm going to give you all the time you need. The only thing we ask in return as a community is that you do the same thing for someone else.
Yeah.
You have to freely give away what was given to you. That's how you stay sober. Once you've done all this stuff and you've gotten healthy and shiny, you get to keep it by giving it away.
That's awesome.
And I was afraid. Like, I'm the kind of person, like, when I get afraid, I tend to do 10 times more than everyone else.
Yeah.
So one of the first things, I had a friend who had been sober a long time, another drummer. His name was Kellii, also the only other Kellii in Los Angeles.
No way.
Drums. Yeah. And he was like, he and I, when I was getting sober, we were going to meetings a lot. We were hanging out again a lot. And, he started to notice something in me, and he had some extra money and had just bought a new house. And he's like, look, I've got this house. Like, I'm going to fix it up. What would you think about, like, running this sober living for me? And I was like, yeah, I'd love to. It was like, the only thing I asked, though, is, we people come in so many different states of being broken down and useless to ourselves and then society, that, we have to give guys a chance to get their community and their sober life together, and then get them out, getting a job, teaching them how to do interviews and put on a suit and tie and wake up and hit the streets and pay their rent. So the guy, like, you got to give a guy a month or two to get his sober life together, and then you can start expecting him to be able to work at a real job and start paying his share. That was the only thing I asked. I was like, if I'm going to do this, we're going to be serious about it. And, you're probably going to lose some money, but a lot of guys are going to walk out of this house sober and ready to live long, happy lives. And everything you do spreads into like 1,000 lives around you. And from those 1,000 lives into 10,000 lives into, like, even if you're not connected to people, just by being in the world, you're connected to people.
That's absolutely amazing. How long ago was this?
This was I stopped playing music. It was like 2004 to 2008.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. So then when I started playing music a lot more, and it was taking up way more of my time, and I got my, girlfriend, my now wife, my life started to get bigger. So obviously I can't live in a home with 16 men 24 hours a day, following them around and taking them to meetings. And, it was ready for my life to change, That
was amazing. Was this just after the Queens thing? Was it not far after that?
It was about 6 months after I got sober. So it was about a year and a half after the Queens.
Yeah.
Queens was in like 2002, 2003.
Awesome.
Somewhere in there. When did Songs for the Deaf come out? It was right when Songs for the Deaf came out.
Let's tell you what. That's a really good question. Let me just Google that. Stone Age. I think that was Songs for the Deaf. Dear friend Google. Let's have a look. 2002. Yeah. Absolutely killer. That was amazing. So with bands now for fun, what music are you listening to? So obviously I know that, you do this amazing music with Failure, but for fun and for pleasure, what types of bands are you listening to? Are you listening to like more modern stuff, or do you tend to go back to the stuff you listened to as a kid? Or?
I'm listening to, obviously I'm doing these sessions every week.
Yeah.
So I'm listening to like those 15 new songs every week and learning them. And like I said, that could be anything from like country to, crazy, like, 22-part metal stuff. And everything in between. But also Gabe Van, my engineer out at Akira Sound. One thing we do a lot is he's constantly like playing me new stuff. Like, who were we just listening to? They're about to put out their second record in a year. Let me ask him real quick.
Yeah, cool, man.
He plays me so much. I always forget. I'm so bad with band names. Like, even with bands that I love, like, I don't know any of their song names.
Yeah.
Like, I'm still figuring out like Beatles songs names and Led Zeppelin song names.
Absolutely.
Who who are we listening to? We were just listening to the new Converge Chelsea Wolfe.
Nice.
That sounds pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I know that Chelsea Wolfe like has a relationship with Converge. I think the guitar player filled in with them on a tour, maybe back when a few years ago they had lost like their drummer and their guitar player around the same time.
Do you mean this
And
band?
Ben went from bass to guitar. So then they were looking for a bass player for a while, and then Ben started playing bass, or maybe it was vice versa. But anyway, I know they had a relationship with Converge, so it wasn't crazy to see them like doing this record together.
I've actually,
it's such an amazing record to hear her beautiful voice in contrast to their like dirty, thick.
It's awesome.
What else are we listening to?
I've actually got Chelsea Wolfe talking about them. I've actually got them on my shirt.
Oh, really?
Without realizing, yeah.
Oh,
I actually
wow,
saw them
cool.
live. Yeah. I saw him supporting Perfect Circle over in Manchester, and I never heard them before. But her voice, like you said, man, is just absolutely amazing.
They're such a good band, and she and Ben, they're both like. If I ever have any questions, like about how things are being done right now, because they're like a newer band.
Yeah.
Like when we needed to switch vinyl providers. Like the first person I hit up was Ben. I was like, "Who does your vinyl?" Because I know they do a lot of vinyl.
Yeah.
And then like we were moving merch companies, and I like hit him up, "Who's doing your merch?" So we're like actually using both their vinyl people and their merch company over the last couple of years. But they're both just such like really sweethearts, and musically they've got such a cool thing going on. Who else? God, there's so much cool music out there. There's a lot of music out there now that is just like, what the fuck are they playing? Like, how? First of all, how physically can anyone play all of those notes like forever and just not stop playing them?
Absolutely.
And then have like a record's worth of material that's just that insanely good and written with all of those notes. Like it's so tiring.
It's just crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, back in my day, like Neil Peart was sort of the best you can be.
Yeah.
But I mean, the Neil Pearts of the world, like they don't hold a candle to what some of these dudes are doing. Like even Thomas Pritchard and the Mars Volta drummers, like what they were doing 10 years ago, like
Absolutely.
What drummers are doing right now, it's just total insanity. Like they're robots. It just seems like what they're doing isn't even humanly possible, but it's done in a really like thought out, professional, like it's still really musical. It's not just someone, saying, look at me, look at me, look at me. I've got self-esteem problems. Please notice me and tell me I'm great. Like it's actually like, it's almost like this jazz metal hybrid of drum skill that's come on the scene. That's just, it's total insanity.
Absolutely. Completely agree. I think is it Animals as Leaders? I think that's like one of the bands that I listen to.
Yeah.
I don't know if you check those guys out, and they're just bonkers.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Absolutely crazy, some of that stuff. But it's so cool. Maybe, I don't know if you agree, but maybe musicians are, getting better and better and better because they've got the internet, so they can learn from all the old records, but as well, they've got every tutor in the world that they can just go maybe on YouTube or wherever or sign up on a course and they can learn from these people. I don't know if that's...
It's partially that, but, I think they would still... thankfully, music is still a space where people can do new things.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be somebody that wants to outdo the last somebody. So in that way, ability continues to grow, and it creates a whole new musical language that when you're 12 years old, you get turned on to it. Yeah. And that's your Rush.
Yeah.
Like Rush to Tool, to like all this stuff that's going on now. Like, people just keep experimenting and building a bigger and better machine. and younger kids that's how they hear and interpret music. So it's really natural for them to jump in and not be able to be anywhere near being able to play that. Not unlike, when I tried to play an AC/DC record for the first time, or a Rush record for the first time soon after. It was so beyond my ability, but I came home every day after school until I could play all of those records note for note, back to back, and then start playing them like how I would play them, and doing different drum fills or soloing for the entire verse, or, and I think like music does that to people. It's really like going to the moon or the solar system. You're in this creative space where you're given the ability, once you get a certain level of musical language and ability to just keep playing note after, like you speak, to just be able to speak nonstop through your instrument. You get into this place where you start to explore and accomplish things that you couldn't the day before, and that moment, I'll never forget that moment where I could finally do something that I had been working so hard and so long on, but it was an instant later that I went looking for that other thing that I couldn't do, and it's that, like, as soon as you reach that goal, you drop it and don't even remember it anymore because you've already moved on to another one. That's something about music. There's so many things about music that if you're just a person, that music can bring to you and your personality, and just offer you a skill set to live in the world that you're not going to get from anything else that you do. Beyond whether you want to be rich and famous or make records or any of that stuff. Like, I think all arts generally do that. I think that's why they used to be taught religiously. Like, every child was taught an art. Yeah. And it had nothing to do with whether they were going to pursue it to fame and fortune, but it had to do with it turned them into a well-rounded human being with a skill set that you only got from the art. And in return, you could only appreciate because of the art.
Absolutely. And I suppose, and I've talked to a few, that's so cool. Thanks, Kellii. I've spoke to quite a few engineers about this, that everyone perceives music in a different way. So for example, sometimes I've seen on communities, I'm sure you've seen it on engineering communities, where someone will say, oh, well, this EQ, it's here to do this. It's like, well, not necessarily. You might hear it in this way and someone else might hear it another way. Like, for example, drums, someone might say, that's the shittest kit in the world, yet someone else will say, no, this is the greatest kit in the world. And I think that's what I love about music. I don't know if you agree, but it's just like everyone, however many billion people there are on this planet, everyone perceives music in a different way.
For sure.
That's exciting. For sure. That's cool.
For sure. That being said, though, there is a difference in instruments and how good they are, because when you're on a really, really, really well-made instrument, you're playing it effortless. Yeah. And there's something to be said about playing a bad instrument really, really, really well. Because when you go to a fine instrument that was made with someone's hands, your ability is just tenfold that much more, because it's so effortless to you now. And you went the hard road to learn to be as good as you are. Like, you got your chops and your ability through nothing less than constant effort to play that instrument. Idols was the band I was trying to think of.
Oh, cool. Right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And you were actually asking earlier, I hit up my engineer, the mics that we're using for my sessions.
Yep.
We're using, what are we using? Some KM 184s.
Oh, nice.
M160s. And the 414s. Those are like the overheads. We're kind of going back and forth between, depending on what I'm recording on.
Okay. Awesome.
And everything else is just normal.
Yeah.
I think there's a 57 on the snare top and bottom.
Yeah.
Normal stuff. Nothing special.
As I know that I went into a session with one of my friends, and it's beautiful studio in Manchester. It's got a beautiful new Genesis desk, and I think the drummer was playing a pork pie. I don't know if you've come across pork pie
Yeah,
drums.
yeah,
Yeah,
They're
so
here actually.
it's really cool kit. And I listened to it when I was watching the mix engineer, sorry, the recording engineer, and was using a trash mic. And I'd never thought to use a trash mic before, but it made like such a big difference to the drum sound. It was really cool to kind of hear that. But it's
Yeah.
quite interesting as I watched a few engineers just do drums in different ways. And I'm a nerd with that sort of stuff, Kelly. I really enjoy kind of watching different engineers and different takes, you know.
There's something to be said about having a drummer that you record a lot and really getting to know their playing.
Yeah.
And having being afforded the chance to switch out microphones.
Yeah.
Suited to their playing.
Okay.
And I only bring that up because nobody will ever record me as well as Ken does.
Yeah.
And engineer me as well as Ken does, because he knows the way I play. He knows when I'm going to really start hitting hard, and he knows when I'm really going to be playing softly, and how I do those two things in relationship to our music.
Yeah.
But he also knows, like, because my playing is so emotional, like which microphones are best going to facilitate capturing what it is that I do on one of our records. While leaving room for him to reinvent himself every time we make a record.
Absolutely incredible. It must be, incredible to just be able to try new things out with a band as well. I'm massively looking forward to hearing the new material as well. Did you say, is there a release date, did you say, Kellii?
We haven't come up with a firm release date. That's why we're getting together tomorrow.
Okay.
But I would say, like probably somewhere around March or February.
Yeah.
And we'll probably trickle out, a single or two before then.
Amazing. I think
it's kind of, tease it along and sort of, do what people do now with social and streaming and, all that just different marketing stuff that you have at your fingertips now, and do some press and stuff.
Amazing. Is that what I've noticed? I'm sure you've seen this as well with bands that, I'll miss bands like yourselves, like you're doing full albums, like doing full concept albums and telling maybe a cohesive story all the way through an album. But I'm sure you've seen it as well. Many bands now, they just release singles and that's it to keep their audience interested. So they might do a single in January and then February and just kind of keep going on like that, or an EP. But do you think bands are missing out by not doing albums and, going down that road?
I don't know without that insight into like a specific band and why it is they do what they do.
Yeah.
I mean, I can generally say, and this isn't a bad or good thing.
Sure.
I mean, it doesn't really matter to me either way.
Yeah.
I have seen that over the years, there's a common trend where most records only have one or two singles and everything else, isn't really that much to write home about.
Yeah.
I don't think there are a lot of bands that are good at making records. I think there are, a lot of bands or artists, whatever, that are good at making a song or two.
Yeah.
So I don't know why that reflects in the marketing. It probably, I would assume, was someone's idea because that's all that exists. And it's easier for them to do their job to just concentrate on the two best ones. And, people just get the other ones when they get the record and they can decide themselves. But, I know that people aren't really that interested in investing a lot of time and effort and money into more than one or two good songs on a record because there is nothing else. They're not going to waste a bunch of money promoting what's not there.
No, yeah,
And
absolutely.
it allows them to schedule those things so they can move on to other things or schedule more things in between.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a business.
absolutely.
It's all about like scheduling the product so you can give, each of those 10 to 100 things the same amount of time and effort in the same sphere with the same exact formula and the same amount of money.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I just miss bands just, making, album after album, you know. But I think maybe, I don't know if you agree, but maybe Spotify has had something to do with that, and iTunes as well. The fact that kids can, this is another question for you actually thinking about it. So with genre as well, it's like kind of, I'm sure, you listen to bands like you did like in the 80s and the 90s, like I did definitely in the 90s. There was scenes, there was the grunge scene or there was the punk
Yeah.
scene or
Yeah.
whatever. But now there just seems to be like kids are just into everything
Yeah.
because they've got
Yeah.
Spotify or they've got
Yeah.
iTunes or whatever. So do you reckon that, kids are gonna go back to having these scenes again, or do you reckon it's, there's just lots of different options,
I,
so
you know, I
opportunities
have,
won't exist?
I have no idea. The hopeful part of me imagines a scenario where all of this like hyper marketing,
Yeah,
like showing your face all the time and singles, and that is just going to get so bad that people start to see its transparentness,
yeah,
and it all caves in on itself, and things go back to a more pure way of doing and experiencing music again. I'm hoping vinyl coming back is a foreshadowing to everything's going to collapse and people are going to require more out of their experience than knowing everything is no longer going to be enough.
yeah,
And they have resourced that gem, all of it, out of the earth, and it no longer exists.
yeah.
So it's going to have to be replaced with mystery and not needing to know everything to making it special again.
Absolutely agree. It's just such a shame that, I'm sure you've seen it, where there might be a song on TikTok, everyone dances to it, and all of a sudden that song is like number one in the charts. It's crazy, and it's a completely different world, I suppose. But I can't wait for people to
I
listen
mean,
to albums.
it's that type of human behavior is the same thing that took a band like ours
Yeah.
to 150 fans breaking up and coming back to 100 times that.
Okay.
Someone had a cassette and gave it to another person who gave it to 10 people who gave it to 100 people to so I think that thing has always existed.
Yeah.
There's just this new thing that everyone's interested in. I look, if you and I have another interview in a year
Yeah.
and we've got like a top or whatever they call it, TikTok dance song,
Yeah.
and that's like our claim to fame and our audience grows. So we get to play more people and we're making more money. So we can spend that money having better shows and playing more shows.
Yeah.
Hey man, I'm all for it. I'm totally
Cool.
like, yes. I embrace it. I mean, it's new. I don't fully understand it. I don't knock it.
Yeah.
It's there and it's just another tool. I just, I'm not going to go out and do a bunch of stuff that makes me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Just to make a buck. I
Yeah.
mean, I've never
Sure.
done that
Absolutely.
before. So that's kind of just my personality. I don't think anything's ever going to be able to take that away from me.
Yeah.
But I can appreciate people developing and creating new things and spreading stuff. I'm all about like, I love to watch bees like sit on a flower and then like take that pollen to another flower, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just like the planet Earth. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
way nature works. You know, pollen gets spread around, and then, you know, we get fruit from the local store in Europe, Japan, and California. You know, there's nothing different. Like, it's all the same. I mean, that's how
Yeah.
the earth works. That's how people work. It's
Absolutely.
cool. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm kind of tickled and pleasantly surprised at like the insanity and like borderline obnoxiousness of some stuff, but at the same time, like, you know, I think it's really funny, like how resourceful and ingenious people can be, you know, when they set out to whatever reason create something new to make things easier.
Absolutely. So maybe that's like the new way that people create art as well.
Yeah, I mean, it
Yeah,
definitely. You know,
yeah,
I'll never be, well, I mean, never is a strong word, but hopefully, um, you know, I will never be one of those people that, you know, I don't generally poo-poo things that I don't understand.
yeah, yeah.
You know, and I can generally see, just like the conversation we just had, you know, I
Yeah,
don't understand a
completely.
lot of that stuff, but that doesn't make me fail to recognize its usefulness, and it's just another avenue for, you know, people in a new language to create new stuff. You know, probably unlike my dad used to burst into our rehearsals screaming, "Play Motown," you know, because he loved Motown. You know, and are you
Awesome.
kids? You know, it's you know, it's
Yeah,
that same thing. Um, where you know, when Failure broke up, we didn't even have mobile phones. We didn't have the internet. You know, we had a mix cassette that got passed around from person to person.
that's
Um,
amazing.
so, you know, I'm all for. I don't always understand it, but I think like invention is, you know, what frees us from the problems that we're facing.
Yeah,
You know,
completely.
sometimes at first it creates more problems, but it, you know, it also you know, alleviates and solves problems as well.
Completely. I think probably paraphrasing, but I remember watching an interview with David Bowie on YouTube, and him saying that the internet is going to be one of the greatest things to happen to humanity, but also one of the worst as well at the same time. So it's crazy, like what we can do, but also what destruction we can do with what we've got in front of us now as well.
Well, I mean, you know, good and bad happen. They're not two separate things.
Yeah,
They're all one part of the same thing.
yeah,
Like light and dark, like they're not two separate instances. They're one instance, you know, that happen simultaneously at different moments.
yeah,
You know, your awareness, when you're looking at dark, you're aware of the darkness. When you're
yeah.
looking at the light, you're aware of only the light. The darkness is still happening, whether you're looking at it or not. It still exists. So, yeah, David Bowie was right, but you know, it's much more than that. Like, that exists in everything.
Yeah,
You know, I could tell someone I love and adore them, and someone else could overhear that and get jealous.
sure.
You know, that's simultaneously the most beautiful thing and the ugliest thing happening all at once, because they're the same thing. They're not two separate things.
Absolutely. It's just crazy. But again, what I love is the fact that with technology, all the cool things that you can do now, and we go back to recording, but the fact that a kid can now get, I don't know, Logic or whatever they're using or Reaper on their laptop and just create music from scratch.
Yeah.
It's insane. Absolutely
Yeah.
insane. I know you said about Failure, doing your recordings and getting all the gear back in the mid 90s, but I'm guessing that were you guys using tape back then? Is that how you used
We were
to
using
record?
ADATs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and a Mackie console.
Wow.
Yeah, we had four ADATs running at the same time. Well, we were using mainly three of them. The fourth was because they would go down all the time.
Yeah, yeah,
So the fourth was to fill in when one would go down, and they were just syncing them up. Like, it was, you know, we lost hours and days just on, you know, the technology and its capacity.
It's absolutely mad. But the
But
fact
it
that again,
sounded great.
yeah, sounded amazing. Absolutely amazing. Have you recorded on tape as well? Have you done
No.
much stuff on tape? Or
No, we do everything digital. We do everything like in the box.
Yeah.
Drums are the only analog thing in the band.
Amazing. Absolutely. It's
No
just,
amplifiers live, zero. It's all like we're putting a recording studio on a stage. We do all of our own monitors. Everything is triggered from main stage. Like I have a set of pads. Greg's got a couple keyboards. Ken's got a keyboard. I've got like a couple foot switches and different pads around the kit for playing like sequenced stuff and, you know, timed sounds. And we reproduce generally everything that's on the records live.
Amazing. So are you guys using Campers or are you using Axe Effects, are you?
Yeah, we're using the Axe Effects.
Axe Effects.
Yeah. When we started out, I think there was a moment where we tried out the Kempers first.
Yeah.
And they sounded great. The one drawback was when they go down, they're down for like more than 60 seconds. Like they're a showstopper. You know, with Axe Effects, like they go down, you flick on, off, you're back up.
No way.
So it's not a showstopper. And we have backups built into our live show.
Yeah.
And we also, back in the day, both Ken and Greg play guitar and bass. So we were forced to bring 2 sets of guitar amps and 2 sets of bass amps. And they would literally physically switch instruments back and forth between songs.
Yeah.
Now you just go pick up your instrument and your pedals switch whether you're playing the bass patches or the guitar patches. And everything is tied into, we have a master. So when Ken switches to the next song, all of the sounds change for all of my pads, for all the keyboards, and for all the effects, for all the scenes for that new song.
Wow.
Yeah. And all of our iPads change. We have all these iPads slaved together with our set lists and stuff. It's pretty like modern.
That's crazy.
But the thing that I say about it is because there are no amplifiers, our live show sounds exactly like the record every single night.
Yeah.
Because an amplifier sounds different every place you take it.
Yeah.
Our live show doesn't have any amplifiers, so it sounds exactly like our record every single night. And we run our own monitors and they're preset. So what we're hearing sounds exactly the same every single night.
It's just technology. It's what you can do now. It's crazy. And I don't know, you know, what you think or Greg thinks or Ken thinks, but the fact that to my ears, a live amp, and I know many guitarists would argue with this, compared to an Axe Effects or a Kemper, to an audience, it's almost indistinguishable. It's literally, it's like they can't tell the difference between the two. It's just crazy.
But they know.
Yeah.
Since we've been back, like the 4th member of the band is the way we sound live. Like there's not a single person that comes to and leaves a Failure show that doesn't say that this is one of the best live shows they've ever been to. Amazing. Because of the sound, specifically because of the sound.
Yeah. That's crazy. Absolutely love that. Well, what have been some of your favorite bands that you've supported or have supported you over the years?
I mean, you know, since we got back together, we don't, we generally do an evening with Failure where we play about 2.5 hours. And we usually edit together a film having to do somehow with the band as the opener, like a 20-minute opener. Yeah. Because it's a lot to ask to sit through like 3 bands, 2 of which you don't even know when you're paying to see the band at the end. And it's taxing. Your ears are tired. You're tired. So that we get to play by ourselves. So people are like, you know, kind of like UFC, that first round when everyone's dry and you can really wrestle and grapple, you know, and no one's slipping around and getting out of holds that otherwise they would have lost the match over. It's kind of like that. Like everyone's really fresh. as soon as we hit the first note. That unfortunately, like, we have enough material that, we I think we've got, like, I don't know, close to 100 songs by now.
Wow, that's crazy.
Like, we've put out 3 double records.
Yeah.
And then we have 1, 2, 3, now 4 single records. Like, we have a lot of material to go through.
Hell of a lot.
But we did a special run with the guys from Hum. Who, back in the day, I remember when a friend of mine was working with them over at RCA when they got, like, really big. And I really liked them at the time in the 90s. And we had just finished Fantastic Planet. And I was going over RCA every day because we didn't have a record label anymore. Right when we finished, our record label went away. So I was making cassette copies every single day, like 12 of them a day. And then I'd, ride down there on my bike, put them in my backpack, ride home. And I'd pass them out to business people that I knew when I would go out at night to clubs and stuff, in hopes that one of them would, like, put it on and go, holy fuck, we've got to sign these guys. And we'd have a new home for our record. It was like the original DIY. Or DIY. Anyway, I had given a package of a couple Failure t-shirts, cassette copy, because they were on tour of Fantastic Planet. And my friend John, who I said was working with them, got it to them out on the road. So we kind of became friends that way, and we started talking about, when they got back, they were going to do a record, and then we should do some touring together in, like, 98.
Yeah.
I think it probably would have been. And they broke up instead. So they had gotten back together shortly after we got back together. So I reached out to Matt and was just like, hey, what do you think about this thing? Let's do it. So we did, I think, like, probably, like, from Florida up to New York, like maybe 9 or 10 shows with them.
Okay, cool.
And it was bonkers. It was totally bonkers because no one had seen them since the 90s. And no one obviously had seen us since the 90s. So it was just like this really cool thing that was kind of a modern day, like, time warp for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I think it brought a lot of people out, our fans and their fans, and kind of, made some fast friends between the two groups of fans, as well as probably turned a lot of new people that hadn't heard us, or a lot of people who hadn't heard them, onto each of the bands. That was super cool. That's kind of like the only thing we've done, I think, since we've been back together that wasn't solely just us.
Yeah.
Back in the day, we did a lot of touring with Tool. We toured the world twice on 2 separate records with Tool. Well, one mainly on Magnified, then we did Lollapalooza with Tool and a bunch of other touring with Tool before we inevitably, like, broke up back in the 90s. We did do, I think, maybe 6 shows with them when we got back together in, like, 2014.
All right, okay.
Which that was pretty fun. And obviously, like, now they're enormous. Like, we were playing where the Phoenix Suns play and, these gigantic coliseums.
Absolutely incredible bands. I've never seen Tool live, but I've seen Perfect Circle. Man, I've got to go see him.
Forget about it.
Really?
You got to go see Tool live.
Yeah.
They announced some shows. You should go to one of those before they sell out.
Yeah, definitely.
Go, actually.
The touring,
because, you may never get to see them again.
Oh, man, I've got to do it. I think it's arena gigs that they're doing over in the UK.
Yeah.
I think that's their plan. So, man, absolutely got to grab a couple of tickets.
I think they're one of the best live bands still. Like, their music live is just a serious force to be reckoned with. I've been, like, a massive Tool fan forever. Like, even when we toured with them, I would sit down and I would watch them play every single night, and then I would go off and get into whatever shenanigans I was going to get into. That was, like, my ritual. And it's just, they're hands down, like, just one of the best bands.
Absolutely. They're just like kind of, yeah, just like their time signatures and
It's
the
so well written,
creativity. Yeah. And the
and it's just so
videos as
evil.
well.
Their music
Yeah.
is so evil and powerful.
It's mad. I really enjoy the new album as well. I suppose it's not that new. It's now a couple of years old, but as well, just like listen to the new stuff. It was amazing. But I think maybe, so I know that they purposely, if I'm right in saying so, weren't on the streaming services for quite a while.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, released a new album and then run the streaming services, and everyone went, right. I just saw on Facebook, was that it? Was that the reason why they did it? Wow. But yeah, everyone just all of a sudden was like became Tool fans like over the space of maybe
I mean,
a
what
couple
other
of weeks.
reason could there possibly be to give away your music for free?
Yeah. Gain more fans. Absolutely.
I mean, another thing I love about them is, they always do these things. I don't know if it's consciously or unconsciously that it is just what they do and part of their, universe.
Yeah.
But they, back in the day, they wouldn't do interviews. And it just like you were saying earlier, made them more mysterious and people wanted more.
Yeah, completely.
They just do the complete opposite of everybody else. And it, for whatever reason, pays them extreme dividends. Nobody else it works for. But for them, and then like as if they weren't big enough. I don't think they planned it necessarily. I think they were like, fuck streaming services. We're not going to give our shit away for free. Like, we work hard on this stuff. Like, why would we give it away for free? That's insanity. But then, flash forward 12 years, they give it away and it rockets them into an even more extreme massiveness. And because they never did all those interviews and appearances, nobody knows what the fuck they look like. For the most part, like they can generally walk around like normal people.
Yeah.
They have like Tom Hanks fame, but they can walk around like, anyone.
Yeah. Not many bands, completely, not many bands can get away with that.
None.
At all. Yeah.
Name another one.
I can't think of one.
No,
well, Slipknot for a bit.
But we were saying it earlier. Like everyone's face is plastered all over everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Slipknot, like they wear a mask.
Yeah.
Like, which is its own thing. Like I could never perform and wear a mask every single. That would kill me.
Oh, that's crazy.
Like that can't be easy to do. And that's a serious commitment to hide your identity. But they're like physically hiding their identity. These guys chose that, our identity is not going to be used as a thing to market us. People are going to get the music, and that's all they're going to get. Period.
That's amazing.
That's why they did it.
Yeah.
Like, fuck that shit. No, that's like we play music. That's what they get. That's what Tool is.
But the videos as well. It's just I remember just watching all the fucked up weird animation videos as well.
They're
and
crazy.
Again, it's just so clever. Well, the guitarist did he work on, was it special effects for films? And that was kind of like
he was Stan. Is it Stan Winston? He was Stan Winston, the special effects guy's assistant.
All right, cool.
Guy that did Jurassic Park and Nightmare on Elm Street and like all that 80s, 90s stuff.
Yeah.
He was. Ken actually edited the prison sex video.
Oh, right, no way.
Ken was a filmmaker also before he kind of abandoned that in pursuit of music.
Yeah. Absolutely
He makes all of our videos.
Does he?
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Absolutely amazing. And I watched his YouTube channel as well, which is pretty cool. Like kind of with all the
awesome, right?
Oh, it's great. With all the production stuff as well.
Oh, and his sense of humor is great. I'm really happy he started doing that. So like people can see what I get to see all the time. He has just an incredible sense of humor. His show's really funny. Like, I don't think he ever really had an outlet before where he could sort of show that side. of himself. It was always, in Failure, we tend to be more on the, serious side of things.
Absolutely. But that's cool. Again, the fact that with the internet and with technology that you can do that, you can create new content, create new things, and be yourself as well if you want to. And that's cool. It's so amazing. Absolutely amazing, man. But yeah, it's great.
Holy shit. It's 4:30.
It is amazing. Kellii, well, what are you up to for the rest of the day then? Have you got any more plans for the rest of the day?
Yeah, well, I've got a couple UFC fights that I have to watch that I didn't watch yesterday.
Okay, cool.
I'm probably going to watch the boxing match again, the Fury and what's his face? That big heavyweight match that was on last night.
Yeah,
Tyson Fury.
Yeah.
Against Deontay Wilder.
Awesome.
Yeah. I kind of watched it really quickly last night because I didn't realize I'd be able to get it for free.
Oh, right. No way.
Yeah, well, I most of them are usually huge pay-per-view events.
Yeah.
But I have the ESPN network.
Oh, right. Okay.
To do all the free UFC fights.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, that fight was free.
Awesome.
So I got to watch the replay of it.
Oh, amazing, man. Absolutely brilliant. It's at 12:30 over here as well. So it's in the morning.
Right. Yeah. 8 hours ahead, right?
Yeah. But man, it's been an absolute honor chatting with you, though. It's been
likewise. Thanks for reaching out to me.
Yeah, no worries, man. It's great, and I just can't wait to hear the new music that you guys come out with as well. With the drumming stuff as well that you're doing, where can people get in contact with you to drum?
Hit me up on Facebook. Hit me up on Kellii Scott on Facebook. Just DM me.
Awesome.
And reach out and say, I've got a tune. Like, what do I got to do now?
Amazing. I think as well on our community on Produce, Mix, Fix, and Conquer, I think there'll probably be loads of engineers that will jump on that as well, man. So maybe we should put it on that.
I'm literally, like, when I say dirt cheap, I'm doing it dirt cheap.
Amazing. Absolutely incredible. We'll have to definitely put it on the community, but
yeah, because the idea is everyone to be able to access it.
That'd be brilliant. I think, though, to be fair, there's a lot of people kind of not say cheating, but they're kind of using like drum programs as well. But to actually have like a pro live drummer drumming on your track,
it makes a huge difference. I've definitely replaced some really good programming where I'm just like, just keep that, But I get it. It's like, it's not the same as having me play on it. But it's, some of them, like, there's already a high bar. It's like, whoa, this is really, really good.
Yeah.
Not that there always isn't. I mean, that's one thing I will say is there's not a single song that I've played on ever, whether it be Failure or these sessions that I'm doing there. Everyone gets the same amount of love, work, and commitment.
Yeah.
Like, this is my stuff. So when it leaves, like, I have to be able to say, yeah, that's the best I'm going to be able to do that.
So cool, man. I can't wait to hear all the new music that you produce. It's gonna be great.
I've done like 380 songs since
February.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Think about it. I'm doing 15 to 20 a week.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I tell you what, you're not gonna get
stuff.
You're not gonna get bored doing all that. That's insane. That's so cool.
That's like I'm doing about 50 songs, between 50 and 60 songs a month.
That's mad.
And I've been doing it since February.
So is this probably the busiest that you've ever been drumming, would you say?
No. I mean, like, when I had the Linda gig, I was playing every single day. I would go into work and play all day, 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Sometimes on Saturday and Sunday also.
Wow.
This is, and I really kind of take my time with it. The idea is to get people back their drum takes within 2 weeks of submitting it.
Yeah.
This batch that I'm on, I got kind of a week behind. This last batch has been like 3 weeks from getting it to turning it back to the person, only because I had to take that 2 weeks off for Failure stuff. I took a week off for my personal pre-production and a week off for drums and to get resettled.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely phenomenal. That's cool, man. No, but thanks so much again for joining though today. It's been brilliant.
Yeah, likewise.
Ace.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
No worries, man. Or feel free to hang out after the live as well. So again, thanks everyone for joining as well. So feel free to join our community, which is facebook.com/groups/produce, mix, fix, and conquer, where we're almost up to 3,000 members now, which has been absolutely crazy since November last year. And feel free to join our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/produce, mix, fix, and conquer, where there's over 50 hours worth of interviews as well. So Kellii, again, thanks so much for your time, man.
Hey, question. Is this actually I just noticed the live 2 hours and 35 minutes. Is this going on live right now?
Yeah, this is live. Yeah, for 2 hours 35.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah, so there you go.
Right on.
It's crazy. Nice one.